In this short video, we will discuss standard deviation. We'll define what it is, we'll talk about how to calculate it, and why we would want to. Standard deviation is the most frequently used measure of variability. It represents the average amount of variability in a data set. It is the average distance of each score from the mean. The greater the standard deviation, the more variable the data set is. In other words, the mean tells us where the middle or the highest part of the curve should go. The standard deviation tells us how skinny or wide the curve will be. Would a corporate training team ever use standard deviation? Yes, quite often. Assessment and survey results are often analyzed in the evaluation phase of a course. This helps us to know if the course needs to be changed before using it again, or if the course was successful. This is the formula for calculating standard deviation. If the sight of that formula had you tapping the brakes, don't worry. Calculating standard deviation is much easier than it looks. Standard deviation equals the square root of the sum of the individual scores less the mean squared divided by the sample size minus 1. In the equation, S stands for standard deviation. Sigma is the mathematical symbol for sum. The first X represents the individual scores. The second X represents the mean of those scores. And to eliminate the negative numbers, that is then squared. The sum is then divided by the sample number minus 1. Subtracting 1 from our sample creates an unbiased estimate. We then have the deviation squared. We calculate the square root to arrive at the standard deviation. How about some practice just to make sure we've got it? Following a recent training course, 6 of our assessment results were examined. The scores were 60, 85, 90, 95, 95, and 100. The first step is to figure the mean. Adding those 6 test scores gives us a total of 525. Dividing that by 6, the number of tests, gives us a mean or an average score of 87.5. Plugging our data into the formula looks like this. Our first step will be to subtract the mean from the individual test scores. The next step eliminates the negative numbers by squaring each of the numbers or multiplying it by itself. Next, we simply perform the addition and the subtraction. Our formula is now saying that the standard deviation of our test scores is the square root of 1037.5 divided by 5. Our standard deviation is the square root of 207.5. Finally, we've calculated our standard deviation to be 14.40. Thank you for watching my video. All images and sounds used were my own or public domain, courtesy of Pixabay and Free Sound.